Good evening, everybody. I hope all of you are safe and healthy wherever you are. Uh, Indian equities has recovered dramatically from the disastrous months of March, and now we are entered a phase of consolidation. Liquidity has also improved significantly. We are in an interesting phase in markets. Globally, if you see, growth stocks are outperforming value stocks. Investors are paying a premium for companies showing growth. Value stocks are trading at historical lows, offering a huge margin of safety. And some investors think that as the economy enters into a recovery mode, migration might take place from growth to value, giving an opportunity to the investor to make tons of money. We believe that value stocks might outperform growth stocks in the near future. And this view has been shared by an industry veteran, Sunil Singhania, who's the founder of Abacus Asset Management. Recently came out with a very interesting perspective on value stocks and growth stocks and the price you pay for quality. I'll just give a quick introduction to Sunil Singhania, whom I know personally for over 2 decades. He's a chartered accountant, rank holder, CFA chartered holder, outstanding academic track record. In fact, very few people know that he passed his CA exam before the age of 21, and in fact, he had to wait for at least 6 to 9 months before he could officially call himself a CA. That's quite unique in an environment where many people take years to pass the CA exam. He had an absolutely stunning and stellar investment track record. He has been an extremely close observer of capital markets, so as to say. Before starting off on his own, he was the CIO of Reliance Mutual Fund. He played a very instrumental role in the growth of Reliance AMC, which under his dynamic leadership became India's leading AMCs and very renowned in the markets for managing equity funds. The other achievement is that the fund which he managed himself, Reliance Growth Fund, became 100x in 21 years, generating a CAGR of almost 23%. Very easily, he could beat the indices, both Nifty and and in fact, the Reliance Small Cap Fund, again, he beat the BSE Small Cap Index by over 12 percentage points. Sunil, apart from being a player in the capital markets, is also socially conscious citizen, so as to say. Till recently, he was the president of the Goregaon Sports Club, and he believes that participating in extracurricular activity sports broadens the horizon and makes you a better leader. Due to his rigor in reading balance sheets, analyzing valuations, evaluating promoters, etc., he brings to the table a very interesting risk perspective. He often says minimizing losses is a tool to maximizing returns. So I'm sure all of you are very eager to listen to his views. So I'll start the discussion with my first question. Value, growth, and quality. And I'll just give you my own perspective. When I came to stock markets in the 90s, so there was a gentleman called Chandrakant Sampath, and he's very well known as a value investor, quality investor. And he used to always say, buy FMCG stocks, buy MNC stocks. Sorry, the FMCG was a corollary. So he was a big fan of MNC stocks, and he used to say quality at any price. So Sunil, recently we came out with your talk on this entire quality, growth, value perspective. I'd love to hear your views on where we are in this entire value, growth, and quality.
First of all, thanks, Venkat and IIFL Securities for having me here, and thanks for all the kind words. I myself was feeling very happy listening to it. But coming straight away to your question about quality and value. See, first of all, quality is very important in every investment decision. Even our own philosophy at Abacus, we have this philosophy which we call MEETS, where M is for management. So quality of management is very important. At the same time, I think when we buy equity, we technically become a partner in the company. And there is always a price you will pay for becoming a partner in a company. It is like buying a flat. So, the best building in, say, Manhattan would be $10,000 a square feet. You will buy at 12, you will buy at 15. You're not going to buy at $100,000 a square feet if the neighboring building is available for $5,000 a square feet. So I think quality is very important, but the price which you pay for the quality also becomes very important. And there's another thing, this always talk about quality versus value. I don't think it's a talk, or we should say that quality will do well or value will do well. Warren Buffett clearly said that quality is ingrained and growth is ingrained in the value. I think the value of the stock also depends on how much growth you are factoring in. And therefore, the piece which we wrote, quality or bubble in quality, was largely saying that yes, the quality companies are great companies, but if they're growing at 10% per annum, whether it is justified to pay 80, 90 PE for them. And now there are new acronyms which have come. The most funny is BAP, which is buy at any price. So now quality has gone to the extent where you have to create new acronyms to justify the thing. So I think my take is very clear that you definitely have to buy quality management, but you also have to take into account the price you are paying for it. And in this market, because we are in India, because we have so many listed companies and because we have so many sectors, there are more than enough opportunity to do that. And I think what we try to do is that we buy good quality companies, but what we do is we take into account the ROEs, which is 15%, the growth rate and the P. And combining that, what we are saying is that buy quality at a good price. Just don't buy quality at any price. So, growth is important, but the price at which you pay or the price which you pay for growth is also very important. So I would say a hybrid between growth and value is something which you have to look at rather than buying growth or buying quality at any price.
So we have all heard of mother of bull markets, maybe now bath of bull markets are about to start. But on a serious note, you talked about 3 parameters, which you said earnings growth, P and ROE. So how do you go about identifying, you said that quality is important, but quality at a price. So how do you go about?
So first of all,
quality is at a huge premium.
Right. So as I mentioned, first we have this this Bible which we call for ourselves, which is the Meets philosophy. Management, you have to have decent management, and I would say decent management is not a reflection of how good the management speaks, whether they are hard or not, but how good the balance sheet is. Second is the earnings. You need to have an earnings growth. Third is events and trends. And I think, Venkat, this is very important in this dynamic world. You can have the best company, but if the sector is under headwind because of the huge, massive disruption, like, airlines, we have the best airline in the world called Indigo. But the sector is in such a disruption because of the events and trends which are happening. Or even, you look at Sun TV, for example, great company, but, onslaught of OTT, digital, and therefore people are getting a little bit restless. Or even some good auto or component companies, if you have this electric vehicle come in, a lot of auto component companies will be out of business. So I think event trends become very important. Timing of the market is very difficult, which is the T. But if you're disciplined, you mean reversion, you'll be able to buy that stock. And then there is the last S, which is the structural run. And in all this, we have imposed this 15, 15, 15. So we say that we will invest in companies where the growth rate is more than 15%. So you're buying growth. We are not saying that we're only buying value. Growth is ingrained. The ROE is more than 15%. That means the quality is ingrained. Because, more than 15% ROE, that means that the management is disciplined to generate a higher return than what you would generate if you just keep your money in an FD or some other place. And less than 15p. That gives us the comfort that valuations are in your favor. And I think a combination of these three has worked wonders for us. And luckily, as I said, in India, there is themes and there are, everyone just wants to buy those 80, 90p companies, leaving all the other companies open for us to buy. And we are very happy with this kind of a situation.
So you are in this market where earnings growth has been given disproportionate multiples, able to identify stocks which are fulfilling your criteria? Because I thought if somebody is growing at 15%, generating 15% ROE, then maybe PE will not be 15.
So Venkat, very surprisingly, market works on fashion. So right now, what is the fashion? Pharma. And chemicals is the fashion. Actually, in January, in this fund, we were able to buy 4 pharma companies, which satisfied this 15, 15, 15 criteria. And even a company like Cadila was available at 12p because that time, pharma was not in fashion. So I think technically what we are doing is buying out of fashion companies, but with decent fundamentals. And there are more than enough. If you actually look at it, when the March episode happened, even companies like Muthoot went down to 5p with an ROE of 25% and a growth of 40%. So if you're disciplined, there are more than enough opportunities which keep on coming up. And I think as an investor for the last 2-3 decades, we have seen that these are waves. There will be always something which comes under fashion and something which will not come under fashion. I will tell you, like IT companies, mid-cap IT companies were available at 6-7p. We bought both Birlasoft and Mastech at 6-7p. They have doubled. Even now they are at 12-13p, generating an ROE of upwards of 40-45%. But investors want to look at it only when there is a fashion to it. And I think, as I said, we are happy to wear our old-fashioned clothes as long as we know that ultimately their fashion will also come.
So this is the T part of your meets.
So T is basically be disciplined, and there is a mean reversion. A company which keeps on growing at 15% will never be cheap forever. Finally, the street and the investor will recognize it. And when the mean reversion happens, so what we benefit on is two ways. Suppose if you buy a company at 8p today, the company is making 100 crores of net profit. Suppose the company grows the net profit at 14-15%. In 5 years, the net profit will become 200 crores. At 200 crores, at the current valuation, the company is trading at 4p. And even if the 8p were to become 12p, instead of 800 crores, the market cap would be 2,400 crores. So you benefit in terms of the profit growth as well as a small possible improvement in the P multiple, because of the consistency in profit growth.
Interesting. So if I can ask you a question differently. So you're a beneficiary of the bipolar market because the entire rally seems to be driven by Reliance and maybe HDFC, Infosys and somebody else. And the rest of the market is not participating in the big rally.
No,
so a stock picker like you is a beneficiary of this, I would say, distorted market.
So, if you are patient and if you're disciplined, always you will be beneficiary. The problem is that people get impatient and people follow the herd. And you end up buying at the highest price and selling at the lowest price. Whereas the reverse should be the case. But unlike the perception that, this market has been bipolar and only 5 companies have performed, frankly, even in the last 1 year, which has been very, very challenging from a market perspective as well as from a mid and small cap perspective, our fund has beaten the Nifty also by 15%. Because these stocks have very quietly performed. And as I said, we are not here to say that we are going to buy Tesla, which can become 5x or which can become 0. We don't understand that, frankly. So if someone is looking at buying Tesla, we are not the people to invest in, because we believe in fundamentals which have been already declared, not what is going to be the case. But if you want to create that extra alpha because of the fact that we are investing in companies which are value, which are growing and which are not discovered, I think then even in these bipolar markets, you are in a position to generate returns.
So this, the other interesting thought which you had is that instead of buying the market leader, buy the number 2 or number 3 if the valuation is right. Will you share some more thoughts on it? Because in this market, world over, everybody says it's a winner takes it all market, and the number 3, number 4 will all become.
Right. No, I think you are right that, globally, particularly in this digital age or in this technology age, the winners takes all. So, if you are in Amazon, you have 80% of the market share and all the others would be 20% of the market share. Or if you're Netflix, maybe you had 80% and now because others are catching up, you have 40-50% market share. But that is not true of every sector. A lot of sectors tend to be quite dispersed, where the market leader will be 30-40% of the market and the rest would be all fringe. I will give an example. We don't have it in this fund, but, we like a company called Lux Industries. It's the second largest player on the innerwear, men's innerwear. Now we all know Page Industries is the market leader, and being the market leader, it trades at a multiple of 90 times earnings. And this company, Lux Industries, is the second largest, trades at a PE of 20 times. But with growth rates equivalent to Page Industries, ROE also pretty decent. And our view is that, this would be a company which, because of its tier 2, tier 3, focus, would be least impacted by all this corona, and will be also least impacted by a lot of competition coming in. So, Louis Philippe has introduced innerwear. Hence, along with Arvind Mill has introduced its innerwear. A lot of other guys are coming in, but they're all targeting the premium segment where Page Industries was. And the second tier, third tier companies were already having competition in which they are this thing. So I think there's an alpha to be made. So Page Industries has fallen 50%, whereas this company has remained flat, from its peak. In fact, from the bottom, it is up like 50-60%. So I think if there is a big difference in the second tier and the third tier company, it makes tremendous sense, And I think that is what we try to follow in a lot of companies, like even in pharma, we have gone not for the Ciplas and Dr. Reddy's of the world, which are trading at 30 PE, but we went into companies which were decent companies, good management, good track record, but which were trading at 12-15 PE. And I think, yes, Cipla and Dr. Reddy has moved up also, but the other companies have moved up much more than what they have. So I think our call is where there is disconnect between the fundamentals and the valuations, rather than companies which are already well discovered.
And so you talked about the events part of it, events and trends which are having a disproportionate impact on the markets. So what do you make of COVID? Because COVID is an exceptional event. I think it's a once in a lifetime event. After 1918, we are having in 2020 an event like this.
Right. No, I think you're right. See, so COVID has disrupted a lot of businesses. We all know that we are not going to restaurants, we are not traveling, we are not going on a holiday, we are not flying, we are not staying in hotels, we are not shopping. And very clearly, all these segments have got impacted. There is no rocket science, it is very logical. On the other hand, there are some businesses which have thrived because of COVID. So pharma, chemicals, IT to a large extent, telecom, because we are all consuming data. The most important thing which we have to realize is that, what we do in our own life is the most important research report. Now in US, what happened in 12 years in terms of e-commerce was doubled in 12 weeks. So what happened in 12 years happened in 12 weeks. In India, the penetration of e-commerce was 5% before COVID. Now it is 23%. I don't remember any time ordering groceries online. Now we are ordering groceries online. So the behavior has changed. And I think this behavior, we have to remember that going forward, there will be some sectors which are going to be permanently impacted, both positively and negatively. Unfortunately, in India, we don't have too much options of investing in these sectors which are going to be positively impacted, like online and e-commerce, because not too many are listed. But then you have to find some indirect beneficiaries. And what you can definitely do is things which are going to be impacted for sure, stay away from it. So, we are not seeing that the price of an airline stock has fallen 50%, to kharid lo. That is hope. I personally believe leisure travel will start, but business travel is going to take a beating for a long, long time. You must be traveling so much. I used to travel so much. I can clearly see for the first time in my life, I have not been on a flight for 6 months. And I don't see me going on a flight for at least the other 2-3 months. Plus, we have all started using this wonderful medium of, communication, which is Zoom and, Microsoft Teams and all. And I think this is going to become a way of life. So we have to just list down that these are the sectors which are going to be permanently impacted. The degree of impact might change. Some sector might get impacted 10%, some might get impacted 70-80%, but there is going to be an impact. I still don't like hotels. I would say that leisure travel will increase. We will all want to go on a holiday. But, whether I will go to Delhi overnight to stay because I have a business meeting, I don't think so. I will use a Zoom call, and the business travelers pay more. Leisure में तो हम 3 महीने से planning करते हैं, the cheapest hotel, the cheapest flight, and then we travel. Business travel, you don't care. If you have to go tomorrow, you have to go tomorrow. So, some sectors, I personally believe we have to just, avoid. What we have done is we have made 4 buckets. One bucket stocks where June quarter of 20 had a higher profit than June 19 quarter. This is dream. that despite all the challenges, June 20 profit is more than June 19 quarter. The second bucket is June 20 had a profit which was marginally lower than June 19 quarter, maybe 10 to 30% lower. So they were reasonably well-performing companies, because we all know that April was a complete washout. The third bucket is companies which were impacted, but they had a great balance sheet and they were able to report profits. The profit might be small, but they did not report a loss. And the fourth bucket is companies which were so much impacted that they had massive losses or losses. Luckily for us, Venkat, the first two buckets, which is companies which had a higher profit and companies which had maybe a similar kind of profit, is 70% of our portfolio. So even in this quarter, our portfolio would have a profit growth despite the challenges in times of COVID. And in fact, all these guys who are preaching quality, the biggest losses have been made by quality companies. If you actually just analyze, the biggest losses in June quarter have been made by the so-called quality companies. But funnily, the prices move up after reporting the loss.
Yes. So I was about to ask you this question because maybe your call on quality was right. They are not so good numbers, but nothing happened to the stock price. They are all healthy. And
sir, we all have learned in college that there is this concept of demand and supply. If the demand is more than supply, price will always reflect a little bit. And then what will happen is either the demand will fall or the supply will be so large that the equilibrium will come back. I think we are going to go to that, scenario.
Just one question. You talked about the 70% of a portfolio, which of yours, which was not impacted in the June quarter. So did this E or the trends part of it play an important role when you're constructing the portfolio, or was that a key element of the way you?
So 2-3 aspects helped. One is, I think the first instance of COVID, when March happened, everyone was negative. I think we were constructive. So we put our cash to use and we figured out that these are some companies which even in June quarter, despite all the disruption, would be pretty decent. So the cash deployment which happened went into those companies. Second is what we did was when we were analyzing, we had a big move in between April to July. I think we used that opportunity to get out of companies which we felt had structural issues going forward. Not one-off issues. If you have a 1 quarter, 2 quarter issue, it's fine. But where we believed that there was structurally impacted, that we basically got rid of, and we moved to companies which we believed would be, less impacted. So I think it was a combination. And the most important thing was we were not in those companies which were anyway very lofty valuations. These were companies which were like brick and mortar, stable, apna sir niche karke kaam karne wali companies, and all of them have done very, very well. So our financials did very well. So we were big in gold finance, they did very well. We were big in life insurance, these companies did very well. We were big in pharma, those companies did very well. We had some chemical companies, I think those companies did very well. And in fact, even our bet on, for example, broking, including IIFL and ICICI Securities, did quite reasonably well in terms of the profit numbers. So it's been a pretty decent there were some sectors where the profit growth, IT did very well for us, for example. There were some sectors where the profit growth has been lower, like cement, but still it has ended up doing much better than what the analyst expected, So our cement portfolio has also been doing well. And then we had some very unique kind of companies like Polyplex. We have a couple of engineering companies like Ion Exchange. Despite being an engineering company, the profit growth has been phenomenal this quarter. We had a company called Anup Engineering, where, it has not grown profit, but it has sort of maintained the profit of last year. So I think across the board, it's been a combination of decent stock picking and some luck also.
This was one of the questions one of the participants wanted to ask. So I hope you have answered this question correctly, that it was a larger contribution of stock picking, understanding of industry, and of course, God's grace is definitely needed for everything.
Right.
There's one more question which is asked by one of our participants, and this small cap mid cap has underperformed for a long time, and you have just launched a mid cap fund, and you also raised money in your 1,300 crores in your growth fund. So what's the big picture? You think that the time for small cap mid cap has come, because you are renowned, your small cap fund has done so well. So this is a question from one of our listeners.
Frankly,
I think they will be very interested to know your perspective on large cap, mid cap, small cap buckets.
Right. So one thing, as investors, we are, I would say, we don't bother whether a stock is a large cap, mid cap, and small cap, as long as there is a alpha play. And I'll give you an example. This Abacus Emerging Opportunities Fund is predominantly a mid and small cap fund. But if you see our large holdings, Cadila is almost 40,000 crore market cap. Muthoot is a 50,000 crore market cap. We recently bought a company called UPL, which is 40,000 crore market cap. It's a nifty stock. Largely because, that was a company which was available at like 10p with an ROE of 18% and a growth of 15%. So it qualified all our, matrices, tick marks were there. And therefore, irrespective of whether it was a large cap or a mid cap, we bought it. But having said that, I think what has happened is, if you see the movement, again, these are waves. Every 4 or 5 years, mid caps, small caps come in fashion, and then they go out of fashion. I think we have already seen 3 years of massive underperformance as far as mid and small cap is concerned. The valuation gap is highest, not only here, but globally. In fact, globally, value and growth, the valuation is the highest ever. And my view is that if the earning growth continue in those companies, it is impossible for any investor to ignore it. And specifically given the fact that, some of the large caps are now really trading at multi-high valuation. In fact, you will be surprised to know that as of today, Abacus Emerging Opportunities Fund, which we already have, has a PE at the fund level of 10x. It's only 10p. Nifty is at 30x. I'm talking about trailing. The ROE of the fund is 17%. The ROE of Nifty is 12%. The debt equity ratio of the fund is 0.2. The debt equity ratio of Nifty is 0.4. So, I think from an investor's perspective, one thing we have to just analyze or realize is that the mid and small caps tend to be more volatile in the near term. It doesn't mean they are risky. Price movement is considered to be risky. It is volatile. The price move up and down a lot more than large caps, because obviously, there are very less institutional investors, and therefore if some selling comes, the price falls and vice versa. But over a period of time, the growth rate is always larger. A lot of these small companies have in fact become large caps. So Bajaj Finance was a small cap. Eicher Motor was a small cap. Muthoot Finance was a small cap. There are so many other companies which have graduated from being small companies to mid companies and large companies. I think fundamentally, if you are clear that my investment horizon is 3-4 years and above, my view would be that the broader market will give you higher returns than a concentrated Nifty kind of a market.
Interesting. So again, this one question on your the management quality perspective. One of our listeners wants to know, what are the factors you consider when you go around evaluating management, and how to evaluate your track record? I think this is a theoretical question, but still people would like to understand your views.
No, I think it is very important. So, in India, we have had history of management like chameleon, changing colors depending on the time of the market or whatever. So over the last 20-25 years of investing, we have learned the lessons by paying the fees, that is by making wrong decisions. And I think the best way of learning is to make losses, because unless you pay fee, no education is complete. So that history is there. Between me and my team, we have more than 100 years of experience of tracking Indian companies cumulatively. The other thing, as I mentioned to you, balance sheets become very important. So there is a difference between showing profit and making profit. I think you should be in a position to understand that which company is trying to show profits and which company is making profit. And that comes from your cash flow analysis. So I think for us, cash flow as well as, balance sheets become very, very important. And, you will also make mistakes, but the idea is that how do we limit our mistakes? And therefore, we are more concerned about stocks where our hypothesis is not working out rather than stocks where our hypothesis is working out. So every day the analysis is that what is it which we are missing, whereby the company is not performing fundamentally as well as in the markets. And those companies become more rigorous for us. Our interaction with the management become more vigorous for us. Because, you should always try to understand, what others are not seeing, what you are seeing. And it can be an opportunity, but the market is full of great intellectual people in the peer group. And it is always good to keep on re-looking at things which are not working. I think the combination of these three ensure that even if you go wrong, you cut your losses at the first opportunity rather than carry it when it is too late.
Interesting. And the other question is on the T part of it, the timing part of it. The markets fell dramatically in the month of March and recovered, I would say, dramatically in the months of April, May, June. You think there's a correction on the anvil, or you don't worry about correction? You say, "Okay, I have identified stock.
No, it is wrong to say we don't worry about correction, because you are in a market every day and the corrections do impact you. But I think what is the view on correction? That is very important. If the view is that there might be, swift and short corrections, then there is no use of worrying about it. So my view is that yes, markets have run up quite sharply. There is definitely one space in the market where there is a little bit of, I would say, retail euphoria which has been built up. And you can see the volumes, the value traded, open interest in a lot of companies are now at an all-time high, and you have to be careful. But my view is that with one, the news flow can be quite positive. At least my view is that in the next 2-3 months, you will definitely have a decisive medicine or vaccination out there because so many people are working on it. Second is the liquidity and fund flow is huge. The interest rates are falling. And I would say the results have been much better than what analysts expected, not only in India, but globally in this quarter. So my view is that reactions are definitely going to come every time. But this time the reactions are going to be short and swift. I would say 4-5% zip-zaw in market correction, then you are back up. The other thing is if you see the sector by sector is now starting to perform. So it started with pharma, chemical. It moved to IT after Infosys results. Then you had a little bit of move in the banking and financial services space. Then you had now you are seeing metals because of the run up which we are seeing in metal prices globally. Metal stocks perform. So I think it's been a pretty a participative kind of a move recently. And now with interest rates falling, there is a likelihood that even vehicle sales might start to pick up because your EMIs go down. I am getting incrementally positive on value residential space, not so much on commercial and high-end residential, but value residential, because it is becoming affordable. You are the best borrowers are now getting home loans at less than 7%. So your EMIs are down 20-30% on a monthly basis, and if you're able to get 10-15% discount from the developer because it's been slow moving, you straight away have a 30-35% reduction on your EMIs. So I think the package is now looking much more solid than it was 2-3 months back.
So coming to this point, you're saying that slowly but surely different sectors are performing. It is not a one sector or 2 sector driven economy. So your feeling is that the leading indicators of the economy are pointing to a recovery in the economy? Because if you talk to people, at least I talk to many people, you get confused signals. People are very sad. The conclusion is not, let me correct the statement, that people are sad.
No, so there is definitely, you are absolutely right. It is not that everything is honky-dory back or to normal. There are few sectors which are doing well, but a lot of sectors, particularly on the small, medium-sized enterprises. See, India is full of small businesses and small retail businesses. I think both of them have got hit. We were starting to trend pretty decently. So, July over June was very, very, I would say, enthusiastic. But August, again, we are seeing some slowdown, largely because some places have had seen floods. Also, we have excellent central and state government. They don't know what they're doing. So every now and then we have this a lockdown and opening up, lockdown and opening up. That doesn't help matter. And I would say that otherwise August would have been much better than July. But the initial indication which we are getting is that wherever malls have opened, like even in Mumbai, people have started visiting it. So that gives us a confidence that human beings are human beings. If what has happened in the US and Europe, that people want to go out, people want to shop, if that happens even in India, at least on the broader top-down basis, you will have decent recovery. Also, job losses have not been as intense as people had earlier expected. There have been definitely job losses, but it is not that 30-40% of the people have lost their jobs. Yes, 5-10% of the people have lost their jobs, and I'm talking about white-collar jobs. Blue-collar jobs are there in plenty. Even if some migrants wants to come back, there are jobs available. But white-collar jobs, yes, 10-15% loss has been there, but it's not like 30-40%. I would just say one thing, that if you are an equity investor, you have to be optimistic. If you are pessimistic, you should not look at equity, you should not invest. And the other thing is, if you go back in history, whoever has been optimistic in this country for the last 20-30 years, only those people have made it big in life.
So actually, on the optimism part of it, I agree, because in life you have to be optimistic. So I fully endorse your view. One of our viewers wanted to know your views on the real estate sector. So I think you spoke about it briefly earlier.
So I am very clear. I think commercial real estate is going to face, increased stress. In fact, I was reading on Wall Street Journal yesterday that, there are some companies which have announced work from home forever. In India, TCS has already announced that 75% of their people will be working from home by 2025. Increasingly, even small companies have realized that, yes, you can't work from home for everyone, but maybe 1 day a week or 2 days a week you can work from home. And particularly, large companies which have large employees like IT, they can very clearly work from home because they have systems to monitor whether the person is working or not. And I think that would mean that the demand for commercial real estate might see some stress, at least in the near term. I would also say that premium residential or super luxury residential will also see some stress, but value residential is I would say should start to do well after a lag of maybe 6-8 months. Once this job scenario stabilizes, I think value residential will do well. And particularly if you are going to come to office, say 1 day a week, for say an IT person who is working say in Parel, and because of the travel, that person was wanting to stay within an hour of the office. But now if the person has to come only 1 day a week, bolega boss, main Lonavala rehta hu. I'll buy a bigger apartment. I have to come only once a week. At least I will have a good standard of living. Or would buy a bigger apartment maybe in Thane or Vasai, I don't know, maybe Kalyan, rather than buy a very small box, matchbox kind of an apartment in proper city. So my view is that that change we will start to see in the next 6-8 months.
Interesting. The other question people have is regarding infrastructure sector. And I think infrastructure once upon a time was a key driver of the economy in the previous 2003 to 2008 rally. And so now the sector is going through more than its fair share of problems. I think the poor sector has got into deep problems.
So, you have to be extremely lucky to make money in this sector. And that we have realized by trying to make money every now and then. See, there's a lot of potential in this sector. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And some of the well-run infrastructure companies like say KEC and Kalpataru did very well even in this June quarter. So if you see infrastructure, India is in the midst of massive infrastructure growth. Metro is one big area where work is going on. Even in this kind of an environment, work is going on. Intercity, basically huge work going on the roadside. There are so many airports which are going to come up for privatization. Obviously, inland waterway, port, water for everyone, and so many other programs announced have all a lot of potential. The problem is, one, it's a sector where it's a working capital intensive sector. Companies involved in this sector have time and again disappointed in terms of managing their cash flow. And therefore, I would say that rather than trying to play infrastructure by investing in EPC companies where you don't have a proper view, you can do an indirect play of maybe buying some engineering companies or buying some, cement companies, which are indirect beneficiaries of the infrastructure side.
Interesting. One of our viewers has this question to you, which is regarding your 15-15-15 rule. So does this mean that portfolio churn will be very high once the stock goes out of this 15?
No, so we don't churn very often. So even if the stock goes out of it, as long as the fundamentals are keeping pace, we retain it. So it's not that on a daily basis, the moment it goes out, you knock it off. That we don't do. Yeah.
So that's an entry rule, not an exit rule. So entry is on a disciplined manner. Exit depends upon whether
an exit, if it becomes like exorbitantly expensive, then we don't mind knocking it off. Like we have knocked off some pharma companies, for example.
Fair. The other person has a question relating to our journey towards the 5 trillion economy. I'm sure all of us are optimistic. All our viewers are also optimistic, and you as a fund manager has to be optimistic. But what is your view on the direction of the economy? What are the key steps taken so that we are confident that the economy is going towards the 5 trillion?
See, 2-3 aspects. One is we have clearly messed up in the last 5-6 years. There is absolutely no doubt in admitting that as an economy. However, we always say that there are 33 crore gods, and the biggest of them all is Indian. So kuch na kuch hamare ko blessing mil jata hai God ka. So now actually if you see, our macros are screwed up in terms of tax collection, in terms of fiscal deficit and all. But what has happened? One is oil refuses to go above $45, and it looks very difficult because if solar power is available for 2 rupees in India and 1 rupee in Middle East, I think the demand for oil is going to be either flat or going down only. That has helped India. Second is, dollar has started to depreciate a little bit. And all this has meant that along with the low interest rates, there's this huge carry trade which is coming up. That, money has started to move for the first time decisively outside of US. Last 6-7 years, everything went into the US because dollar was constantly appreciating. Now, finally you are seeing dollar depreciate quite significantly. We don't know whether it is going to last forever, but at least for now, it looks like that. And that would mean that money flow out of US into risk assets would start to come up in a big way. And that's why you are seeing gold prices going up the way they are, silver pricing going up the way they are, metal prices starting to move up the way they are, and even emerging markets also seeing inflows. In India, we have seen 20 billion come into Jio platforms, 10 billion come into some 6-7 banks, and a lot more waiting. I think all that has meant that our forex reserves are now at $550 billion, which is at the highest level ever. There's so much liquidity because the Reserve Bank does not want the currency to appreciate. And therefore, they are absorbing the dollars and releasing, rupee into. There are so many banks who now have stopped taking short-term deposits. And in fact, if you go and say that I want to do an FD, the short-term deposit rates are 2.53%, lower than the savings rate. And even 6-month, 1-year FD is now 4%, 4.5%. So that is the kind of liquidity. The problem is the banks are still not lending the way they should be lending. Maybe it's a matter of time before that starts to happen. So there is a possibility of surprise coming up, you know. And as I said, we are hopeful, we are optimistic. Also, Indian government behaves and acts only when pushed to the wall. Abhi band baj gayi unki. So now they are talking about Atmanirbhar, you know, defense only buy from India, TV only buy from India, and all those regulations which are needed to promote Indian industry is now coming. There was an article today in the newspapers that Samsung is looking at setting up a base in India where the exports would be $40 billion over the next 5 years. So I think all those things are now looking a reality. But, you know, we should not get happy. You know, bahut baar khali sapne dikha ke we have been, you know, left in the lurch. We have to wait for the government to act. But, you know, if they really act, then this whole thing of China becoming the villain of the world can work to the advantage of India.
And what is your view on the banking and NBFC sector? Because that was a big driver of the market in the recent past. Now,
so I think whenever the economy has a headwind, this is a sector which gets impacted the most. And there is no doubt it is going to get impacted the most even now. Right now, we have the 6-month moratorium, so we don't know what the NPA levels are. But as I said, you know, one is the companies who have good liability franchise. So, you know, if you look at banks, say Kotak and ICICI and HDFC and Axis, they have good liability franchise. You know, they keep, and even SBI, they keep on getting deposits, cheap deposits, which is the dream for any banker. You know, you get cheap liability, you are able to, you know, give it out at a competitive rate, and you make the spread. So now if you see the June numbers of banks, all the banks have reported great increase in their pre-provisioning operating profit, which is a core profit, have been phenomenal. You know, I think most of these banks have already made higher provision for COVID. So unless you have a really, really disastrous scenario, my view would be that the provisions they have already made would more than suffice. You know, however, people are still a little bit confused, uncertain that what will happen after the moratorium period ends. And therefore, our view is that for the next 2-3 months, you will have a scenario where these would languish. Once clarity starts that on both the sides, that, you know, the provisioning might not be as intensive as people is making out to be, you might have a big run up and vice versa. I think what we have tried to do is just focus on franchises which have, you know, banks and financial institutions which have good franchises. Because if you have good liability, you will survive.
And one last question. I don't understand you have another call at 5:30, so I'll just wrap it up. What your views on the pharma sector? You were an earlier pioneer in identifying pharma. You rode the wave. Now, what do you think is the good times?
So one is, you know, pharma sector is one of the very few sectors where India is globally competitive. So we have to realize that, you know, this is one sector where we are among the best in the world.
Actually, if I remember correctly, in Reliance, in the 2005-2006, you had launched a pharma fund.
Yeah. It's a great fund. Even now, Shailesh Bhan runs it. Great fund manager and a great fund. You know, for someone who's looking only at a pharma exposure, it's a great fund. But, you know, pharma is a sector where India is globally competitive. Pharma is again one sector where India has great companies and great entrepreneurs. Third is India stands out as one of the biggest supplier of generic pharma and APIs globally. Fourth is this anti-China rhetoric is helping Indian pharma and chemical sector also. And also the fact that all countries need medicines in a hurry means that the regulatory headwinds have become tailwinds. FDA is becoming very liberal because they themselves want medicines. Having said that, I think we had a dream run in this quarter. A lot of pharma companies which were predominantly exporting, and if you had anything to do with COVID, made huge money. We have to realize one thing, that this might continue for maybe a quarter or two, but this is not going to continue, because if COVID is going to continue, then the market will go for a toss. It can't be both the ways. So we hope that COVID doesn't continue, and we are hopeful that it won't. So that is one thing. Second is, pharma as a sector is very diverse. One company is very different from another. So, you know, when you are investing in steel, most of the companies would be similar. Steel even are in pharma, every company is different. Every company's product is different. Every company's market is different. So you have to do more stock specific research. And third is, don't extrapolate that one company was making 20 crores of profit, has made 50 crores this quarter. This is going to continue forever. There might be a one-off also in that. So it's a great sector. I think at any reaction, you can look at that sector, but be more stock specific there rather than just buying anything because the name is pharma.
I think thank you so much for your time. We have reached the end of our conversation. Many questions are there. Maybe I'll invite you to our show sometime in the future. As you rightly pointed out, be optimistic. Mid cap, small cap valuation gap is large, and this is the next 2-3 years might be a time for mid cap and small cap. Thank you so much for your time, and I wish you all the very best on your new fund also. And I'm sure, given your stellar track record, all investors who invest in your fund will surely benefit from your investing experience. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Venkat. Thanks a lot, IIFL Securities team, and thanks a lot all the participants for joining in. Stay safe, be healthy, and be positive.
Thank you so much.